Rusty, that was a fantastic idea. John, fantastic idea. That was hilarious watching all of you from my viewpoint. Some of you were a little more enthusiastic than others. You know who you are. It was very good. That was fun. All right, we're going to move on with some Rotary business, and I'm going to ask Robin Gorman to come up, and she's got some Paul Harris presentations.
From my vantage point, that was absolutely hilarious. What we have to remember is that some of those who are a little bit not quite so agile, maybe the piano was too fast for you. But y'all did a great job. Okay, it is my pleasure, as always, to talk about the Paul Harris Foundation. And before, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce you all to the most recent ones to be recognized. And while they're here, I'm going to also tell how the rest of you can contribute between now and the end of the year. Okay, this is the Mike and Michael Day. I want to call Mike Biediger, Mike Griggs, and Michael Kahn forward, please, if you all okay. I mean, how perfect it is. Okay, is there a coming up, I want to, of course, thank them tremendously for their contribution to the Paul Harris Foundation. And what's so great about this is they continue to do so. Each one has achieved another level. First of all, Mike Biediger, you are Paul Harris +2. Michael Kahn, you're a Paul Harris +3. Here and present it to you. And Mike Briggs is a Paul Harris +7, which means he has 2 rubies. So congratulations, and gentlemen, don't leave. Congratulations to you all, and again, thank you. I also want to say, they had already made the next level. The good news is, right now, for a limited time, the district is going to match points. So if you have a certain level where you are, maybe several $100s, you can pay half of the rest of that, and the district will pick up the other half. And I do have, and Debbie's going to give me an updated list of everyone here in the club, and to see how close some of you really are, and what a great opportunity to take advantage of the point system. They don't offer this very often, and so I think it's a time that we do need to look at it and say, hey, I can do this. So the next thing is, I want all Rotarians, Paul Harris fellows, to please stand and be recognized. I know I do it every time, but I think it's important. And would you all give yourselves an applause, and also all 3 Mike Briggs, Mike Biediger, and Michael Kahn, thank you all so very much on this special day.
Thank you, Robin. You're doing a great job managing that foundation this year. I appreciate it. We've had a lot of Paul Harris Fellows this year. It's been nice to see everybody contributing. Now I'm going to move ahead and ask past President John Bacus to come up. We've got another very special, fun treat for everyone.
I don't know what was going on before I got here, but somebody knocked everything backwards, so it's a little dicey walking around up here. This is a special treat for me today, and I want you to know that I have a great privilege in presenting the Rotarian of the Year Award for our club's 100th year of service, the year 2016-17. This award is also known as the Distinguished Service Award, and is described in our club records as follows. This highest award made by the Columbia Rotary Club to its members who have an outstanding reputation for many years of service above self, and who have been known for unusual interest, devotion, and accomplishment in making this world a better place. This award for our centennial year is given to someone who joined the club almost 30 years ago. This dedicated Rotarian has been president of the club and one of the few club members to serve as district governor. This person also serves as chair of the past President's Council. This individual is a faithful donor to the Rotary Foundation and is a charter member of the Paul Harris Society. For those of you who don't know, the Paul Harris Society is a group of members who commit to giving $1,000 a year to the Rotary Foundation. And in case you haven't figured out already who I'm talking about, I'm not going to quite try to be so discreet with the rest of my presentation here. She volunteered to chair the Centennial Celebration Committee, spent 5 months leading and encouraging the rest of the members on that committee. And those of you who know her know she can really encourage people who haven't quite got done everything they were supposed to do. So, great encourager. Working with Ann Matthews, a member of Columbia East Club and a vice president of Rotary International, they secured Rotary International President John Germ as our keynote speaker for our celebration event. A lot of us talk about being Rotarians, but this lady is a Rotarian to her core. I am truly honored to present this year the Distinguished Award, the Distinguished Service Rotarian of the Year Award to Ann Walker.
cry a lot, but I'm crying now. I didn't know my daughter was going to be here. Hey, God. And my brother and my sister-in-law, Al and Margaret, and my two brothers. Oh, my goodness. Bless y'all. Margaret and Albert and Wesley and Forrest and Amy and Liza. My goodness, these are my hearts in my family, as they, of course, all are. I'm not going to take a lot of time. I just want to say, yes, this is a complete surprise. I don't cry a lot, but the tears are coming. They're tears of joy. I really appreciate this more than you know. Many of you, I'm here today because I was blessed to be raised by two incredible people. Were they perfect? No, but they were perfect for me. When my dad passed away at the young age of 50, he was in his third term as the district governor of Ruatan, which some of you may or may not be familiar with. It's kind of the farm boys, the country guys, in the form of Rotary. And I traveled a lot with him because I played the piano a lot back then and went to a lot of meetings. And because of the influence of my parents and their raising me to understand that your faith comes first, and then your family, and then your work, and then you always give back. You're not a taker, you're a giver. And always remember that. So on behalf of all of you, I could never have done the things in Rotary that I've done without all of you. And so on behalf of our club and my family and all of those that supported me through the years, I say many, many thanks, and I really appreciate this. And Merry Christmas.
And Laurie, who was instrumental in getting you here on time, because you don't always get here on time. So Laurie, thank you. Yeah, Ann usually scoots around the corner about 10 minutes after the meeting.
Of course, I wouldn't be here without Laurie. Laurie Brazel is my executive assistant, and we're tight, really tight. And I had to run another errand prior to this, and she said, well, just let me go with you and help you. And I said, well, she said, I really don't mind. And I said, okay, well, if you can, come on, that'd be great. So she pulled it off once again. But Laurie, thank you so much. You're loved.
Thank you, Laurie.
Sorry I had to lie to you about health and happiness, Ann. It was just a little white lie. And Lori, thank you. Everybody that came. This is, I know, a very special day. All right, so the real person who's supposed to do health and happiness today, Mr. Bob Borum, is going to come up and entertain us for a few minutes.
It's always good to be recognized as a real person. Well, it's Christmas time, and kids and Christmas go together. One thing you know about kids is they don't always say what is correct. They say what they think they heard. Like one little kid who was in a Christmas play and was talking about the coming of the wise men, and his line was to talk about the wise men and the gifts they brought. And he said they brought gifts of gold and Frankenstein and myrrh. Well, you know, they were wise men, weren't they? They were men. We know that because if they had been women, they would have asked directions and got there on time. If they had been women instead of men, they would have cleaned up the stable and gotten rid of all those animals. If they had been women instead of men, they would have helped deliver the baby. If they had been women instead of men, they would have wrapped that baby in a soft blanket and held it in their arms rather than plunking it down in a little manger with all that stiff straw. If they had been women instead of men, they would have brought casseroles, enough to feed all the shepherds and the Holy Family and everybody, with some left over for tomorrow. And if they had been women instead of men, they would have brought practical gifts like diapers and blankets and a pacifier. That's how we know that they were men and not women. Kids, you know, Frankenstein said, kids say funny little things, especially with the Christmas carols. And Hark the Herald Angels Sing, there's one line where everybody sings, God and sinners reconcile. One little kid was heard singing that line, God and sinners dressed in style. And while the congregation was singing, while shepherds watched their flocks by night, this little kid was heard singing, while shepherds washed their socks by night. Kids do that. Kids also write letters to Santa Claus. Did you ever write a letter to Santa Claus? We all did. This one little kid was wanting some special things for Christmas. And he wrote his letter to Santa, and he started out writing his letter to Santa by saying, Dear Santa, would you please bring me, if it is convenient, an iPhone 10 and the latest superheroes video game. And he thought about that for a moment, and he said, I don't know, that's not firm enough. Santa knows. So he started his letter again, Santa, you must bring me a iPhone 10 and the latest superheroes video game. He thought, well, you know, I don't know, I really want that stuff. And so he sat down and wrote the letter again, Dear Santa, you have got to bring me a iPhone 10 and the new superheroes video game. And he thought about that a little more, and he thought, well, I don't know. Maybe I need to appeal to a higher power. So he sat down and wrote a letter. Dear Jesus, he said, Dear Jesus, please ask Santa to bring me an iPhone 10 and the superheroes video game. And he thought, well, I don't know. I've got to be, I want that stuff. So he wrote another letter, wrote another letter, and he said, Dear Jesus, you have got to ask Santa. And he named his stuff. You know, I don't know. Dear Jesus, he wrote another letter. Make Santa bring me a iPhone 10 and the latest superheroes video game. And he thought, gosh, I don't know about that. So he quit writing the letter, and he walked over to the mantel where the nativity scene was placed. And he reached in, and he took Mary down, and he wrapped her in a towel, and took her down to the basement, and put her in the corner of the basement, and came back upstairs, and started writing his new letter, which went like this. Listen, Jesus, if you ever want to see your mother again, Thursday of this week is a special day. It's the 21st of December, is the winter solstice. And what does that mean? You know, a lot of people say, well, you know, it's the longest night. But I think if we look at it that way, we kind of miss the point. It is the longest night, but it is also time when the light begins to return. And it is the prophet Isaiah years ago who said, the people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of deep darkness, on them the light has shined. I think it's safe to say today and in many days that either all of us have walked in darkness, or are walking in darkness, or will walk in darkness. Many of you know that for me and my family, this has been a year in which we have walked some in darkness. But I'll tell you this, the message that the universe gives to us in this time of year And the message that the religious seasons give to us in this time of year is that the light will come. The light of love, the light of hope, the light of healing is coming. It's coming. And may this Christmas season for each of you, for all of us, be a time when we are blessed by the light of God's presence this day and always. Thank you.
Thank you for such an uplifting message. We appreciate that. All right, I'm going to ask Past President Hal Stevenson to come up and introduce our speaker.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Ted Creech, who arranged for General Livingston to be here, got caught up in the Atlanta power outage. So he couldn't be here today, so I'm filling in. Major General Robert E. Livingston, Jr. is the Adjutant General for the South Carolina National Guard. He serves as the head of the military department of the state of South Carolina. He is commanded at all levels, to include Combined Joint Task Force Phoenix. In Afghanistan, where he was responsible for the training, mentoring, and advising of the Afghan National Security Forces. Since January 2011, he has served as the Adjutant General of South Carolina and serves as the last elected Adjutant General of the state of South Carolina. His awards and decorations include the following: the Defense Superior Service Medal, the Legion of Merit with Oak Leaf Cluster, Bronze Star Medal, Combat Action Badge, Meritorious Service Medal, French Silver and Gold National Defense Medal. And General Livingston, I just want to try to say this because my mother-in-law is from Bogota, Colombia. The Colombian Medalla Militar de la Cosa. Pretty close. He also has the Romanian Silver de Fleury Medal and the Colombian Air Force Cross of Aeronautical Merit. In 2009, he was presented the Sergeant William Jasper Freedom Award for his leadership, and in December of 2016, he was presented the South Carolina Order of the Palmetto. He is married to Barbara Flora Livingston, who's his guest here today. They have 4 children and 5 grandchildren, and he is president of Gregory Electric Company, headquartered here in Columbia, South Carolina. Please welcome Major General Robert E. Livingston.
It's great to be with y'all. I tell you, I really, as a former Rotarian, I am proud of what all y'all do throughout the world. I've had a chance in my service to get out to a couple countries. Most of them are a little underdeveloped, have some challenges. My wife goes to Paris, France. I go to Kabul, Afghanistan. There's something wrong with that picture. Now she will go to Bogota with me, but she wouldn't go to Ecuador during the earthquake, so I'm not sure about that either. But anyway, what I've always seen though is a Rotary presence throughout the world, and you're making a difference out there. If you don't get a chance to travel to third world countries, let me tell you, somebody that has had a chance to be out there, you make a difference. And I really appreciate the time I had with Rotary. I was actually a founding member of Capital Rotary Club many years back, and unfortunately this job and that job, or back then you had mandatory attendance, they were not compatible. So I ended up having to cast one aside. But it is great to see your presence out there every day, so thank you for that. I was asked to talk a little bit about the Office of the Adjutant General, what I do for a living. And I'm always asking that every day. Today we were up with a press conference with the governor talking about opioids, the epidemic going on now throughout the United States. And one of the reporters said, well, what does the National Guard got to do with opioids? And I said, good question. What do we have to do with it? We, within the state, we are the emergency management coordinator, and I emphasize coordinator. So there's a lot of little pieces in there that people just don't understand what goes on with the National Guard. So I thought I'd talk about that a little bit, and then leave a little bit of time for questions. I love the clock sitting there. Well done. I remember that too. Everybody just leaves. You can speak as long as you want to. You won't have an audience after 1:30. I got that. Okay, so to understand the National Guard and not just the National Guard, but everything that we represent, because in my capacity as Adjutant General in South Carolina, I have the Air National Guard, I have the Army National Guard, I have the State Guard, which is the state militia. We have the Youth Challenge Program, which is a program that uses military training to help our youth that have not been able to succeed in traditional society. And we have emergency management. So you see me hanging out with floods and things like that. And that's a little bit different in every state. So how did we get there? Well, you have to go back a couple of years to really figure out how we got there. And the fact is, back to 1670, maybe a little bit more than a couple of years. But the formation of South Carolina. Our National Guard started in Massachusetts in 1636 with the militias there. But when people started settling South Carolina, you gather together to take care of each other, to help each other, and to defend. And that is our traditions as Americans, is that we band together in our family, our communities, our cities, our states, and then we voluntarily give to our federal government certain rights and privileges and certain powers. And by doing that, we create a culture of self-sufficiency. So you fast forward that through to the Revolutionary War. The militia gave birth to the professional army, but it still played a very important role. In fact, about a third of the battles during the Revolutionary War were fought here in South Carolina, mostly by South Carolina militia, defending their homeland and making sure that Cornwallis could not freely come out of Charleston. And that changed the course of the war. You've got that piece of this is my home, this I'm going to defend, and I'm going to defend it forever. We went through the Civil War, learned some very hard lessons there, worked through those issues as a state. And I'm very proud of our state. You know, a lot of people don't want to talk about the Civil War. And it was a hard time. And quite frankly, we were probably on the wrong side. We were on the wrong side, at least as far as the slavery issue is concerned. If it comes to the state rights issue, I might argue some other things. But we learned from that. And we learned so much that when we had very tragic stuff happen in Charleston with the Pinckney murders, we banded together as a state, not to point fingers, but we came together. And then in World War I, our National Guard was represented very well, especially the National Guard in South Carolina. Our 118th Regiment, which traces its lineage all the way back to Francis Marion, was part of the 30th Infantry Division, the most decorated division in World War I, made up of states of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee, a little bit from Georgia. And also the division that had the most Medal of Honor recipients, and the 1st and 118th had, or the 118th had 6 of the 12. So a lot to be proud of there from South Carolina. World War II, again, the 30th Division goes forward. The 178th Field Artillery out of South Carolina also went forward. Korea, kind of the same. Vietnam was an interesting experiment that kind of failed. President Johnson at that time did not want to call it a war, wanted to call it something other than that. I think, one time it's called a policing action, different things. But he decided, made the decision not to activate the National Guard. And so no National Guard units as units participated. We did have individuals participate. We learned some of those lessons from that war, and that gave rise to the Abram Doctrine that said we will never go to war without our National Guard again. And Creighton Abrams Taint's named after him, but also was the secretary or the chief of staff of the Army coming out of Vietnam. Recognized as probably one of our greatest chiefs of staffs of the Army. And then Desert Storm, the National Guard was heavily involved in that. And then after 9/11, at one time in 2005, the total National Guard was over half of the ground troops in Iraq. And of course, we were, the 218th Brigade out of South Carolina was responsible for training and advising Afghan security forces throughout Afghanistan. We were the first regular forces into Helmand Province. We were the first to go down and actually fight with the police, and we were very successful. We went up from 800 police dying a month to 10 to 20 dying a month, because of our presence and our training of them. And I kind of lead you through that progression, and I emphasize the small community piece, the taking care of each other, because that's what the National Guard represents in the United States. It represents the small community. It represents the Manning, South Carolina, the Allendale, South Carolina, the Barnwell. Yes, it represents the big cities too, but it represents our communities. And it goes back to the roots of our country, because we come from the community. And that was a fatal mistake made during Vietnam, is we did not include our communities and our states. We did not ask permission from our states to go to war in Vietnam. And the way our states give permission to go to war in Vietnam is they bring or in any war, is they send their National Guards. So that's our National Guard as a whole. So it makes sense that we're part of emergency management, that we handle that piece of it. We have three major missions as the National Guard. The first one is our federal mission. We are the combat reserve for the United States. I have troops, combat reserve for the Army and the Air Force of the United States. I have troops currently in Afghanistan, our attack aviation battalion, probably one of the best attack aviation battalions in the United States. They are the first National Guard battalion to go back out after we have restructured all of our Army aviation. In fact, they are the first battalion to go out, period. So a great compliment to them. They're doing great work as we get after things in Afghanistan once again. I just welcome back some of our maintenance and air defense, artillery, and engineers from Eastern Europe, providing a hedge against the aggression that's coming from Russia. Our air wing just got back from Korea, providing a hedge against China and North Korea. In our Army and in our military, we talk about the 4+1, the 4 concerns and the +1 concern we have. We're concerned about Russia, we're concerned about China, we're concerned about Iran, and we're concerned about North Korea. Those are the nation states, and then we're concerned about terrorist activities, which would include ISIS at this point. So we're engaged in that battle throughout the world. The second thing we do is that we form partnerships. And we have an official partner in the country of Colombia. Talk about that. We've worked with them since 2004, helping them change their military. And we started with rotary wing training, and we increased their availability rate. We went to wheeled vehicles, helped them go from less than 50% to over 80% availability. We have some experience in counterinsurgency, and we worked with them on that. Of course, they got a lot too. They've been at war for 54 years. But the exciting stuff has just started to occur. In the last 2 years, they have finally reached a peace accord with the FARC. And now they have come to us and said, what we want you to do is help us have a reserve force that looks like your National Guard. We want something that is tied to the community. We want to be able to serve our people in peacetime, and we want to have a very lethal reserve that can step in at a moment's notice. So they recognize what we have here as a National Guard. The other partnerships that we have, we've partnered with the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, almost all of the Middle Eastern countries. We work with Israel, not at the same time with those guys, but we work with Israel with their air defense. We work with Germany quite a bit, Poland and Romania, throughout the world, helping them strengthen their defense. So that's the partnership piece of our National Guard. And then the third thing is we do the Homeland Mission. And our Homeland Mission is not just South Carolina. Our Homeland Mission, we have the one of 4 Army and Air Defense commands in the world. 3 of them are active duty, one's National Guard. So we are the AAMDC for North America. So any ground-based air defense comes out of South Carolina, or is coordinated by South Carolina, out of Anderson, South Carolina, out of the 263rd AAMDC, to include Canada and Alaska. So a lot of stuff that goes on every day that people don't realize. And then, of course, you see the floods, the hurricanes, the ice storms, and things like that. And we are really the support group for that. All disasters are local. So the local incident commander is in charge of what happens in their territory. The National Guard just brings resources and command capability, but we're going to work for the local emergency manager or the mayor or the sheriff. And the same thing is true of all state agencies as we come in to help. I tell you, I am very proud of what our great men and women do. You talked about that I was president and owner of Gregory Electric Company. I am a typical, what we call an M-Day soldier or traditional National Guardsman. Over 80% of our force has a job somewhere else. And they are willing to give of their time. And in today's operational environment, you can expect you will be mobilized. If you're part of the National Guard, you will go into a theater, a combat theater, or at least an operational theater like Eastern Europe, at least once every 5 to 3 years. And our attack aviation is about on that 1 every 3 year schedule. Active duty runs about once every 2 years. So it gives you an idea of that pace of operation that we're asking of our men and women. But it's the right thing to do, because our nation is threatened by people. And it is not, we as a community would not know truly that we're at war unless our neighbors go and fight that war, or unless we go and fight that war. And that's important. We haven't ever tactically lost a war, but we strategically lost one war, and that was Vietnam. It's because we lost the will of the American people early on, because the American people were not behind that war. So it's very critical that our men and women continue to serve in those roles, as well as their partnership and their roles in the state mission. A lot of people don't always understand what makes up our state mission. We have capabilities that we train on doing, whether they be combat, engineering, communications, air defense, aviation, things like that. Many of those duties can be adapted to our state mission. Our Black Hawk helicopters have a rescue capability with winches. We were able to use that to save 31 lives during the floods, 28 of those in about a 10-hour period in Richland County, lives that would have been lost otherwise. But the way that capability comes about is it is a federal capability that comes under the command of the governor in the event of a state disaster. And the state does pay for that capability, but we don't pay for it when we don't use it, and we don't pay for it when we're just training with it. So it's actually a pretty doggone good deal. So that allows us to do that three-way mission. That mission of being there when your country calls, bringing the American people to the fight, building partnerships with other nations so that we don't have to fight wars, because anybody's been to a war, you don't want to go fight another one. And then the third one is being there in the tradition of the militia, in the tradition of the citizen soldier, which is a wonderful thing. I will just mention, as you can imagine, this causes a lot of stress on our people. One of the things that we're dedicated to doing, especially with the Office of the Adjutant General, is helping our people take care of themselves. And I always say, I can't take care of you, but I can help you take care of yourselves. Just a couple of indicators in the National Guard. Our unemployment rate 8 years ago was at 16% for our traditional guardsmen. Today it's less than 2% for our traditional guardsmen. Because the people of South Carolina understand the value that those people bring. Our drug rate, society drug rate runs about 7-8%. Ours is less than 1%, and we test 100%, unannounced testing. Our suicide rate has gone down. Our family high-risk behavior, lost pieces have gone down. And it's because we emphasize 5 things. We work with people on their finances. We work with people on their friends, their family, their fitness, wellness, and their faith. And we're not scared to work on any of those 5, especially their faith, because we ask our people to do very, very difficult things. And you got to have something that doesn't fall back, doesn't crumble under you. And that's a piece that's important to us. So that's kind of our National Guard. I think I got a couple of minutes if anybody's got any questions, but it is always a privilege to be here, and thank you for support of our National Guard. Yes, ma'am.
First, thank you for everything you've done for South Carolina, for our country. I have a question on behalf of the community that cannot be in the National Guard. All of the media nowadays makes it seem like everything is at a high emergency and every organization needs something now, right now, to make it possible to move forward. What do you need from us out of the baby's mouth that we can help you in the National Guard?
I think what I need, we need understanding. And I'm not one of those that say, let's throw money at a problem. So, we got to talk to our politicians about making good, sound decisions. A sounding board out there that, we have more than just military power. We have economic power, we have political power, we have other powers of influence. So to really increase the awareness to support our families, what our National Guard is really doing, because a lot of people, they say, what is our National Guard? But really to get involved politically. And that sounds kind of weird from a guy standing in a uniform, but y'all, through your politicians, make the decision where I send my people next. And that's an awesome responsibility that y'all have, and I hope you take it pretty seriously. Does that answer a question?
What would be the best ways to get in contact with them? Just call our local representative?
It would be,
Okay.
yeah. Yes, sir.
In general, a couple of years ago, there were reports of armories being in disrepair. Are you getting enough state funding or plans in the way to be able to correct that?
I'm not, and that's a very serious issue. My armories are in worse shape than the bombed out facilities I live down in Helmand Province. And it's kind of sad. I went into an armory one day when I took command of the 218th Brigade, and it was raining, and the guys were sitting at their desk with umbrellas over themselves at the desk because the roof was leaking so bad. And that, that leads to mold, that leads to other things like that. There was a national study done on armories, and we have the second worst armories in the nation. And a lot of that goes back to the age of our facilities. It also goes back to, there was about a 15-year period where we got $0, absolutely $0 to maintain 30 and 40-year-old facilities. Now, what we are getting at this point is, last year we got $5 million from the state, which is about where we were asking them to be. I've got a $60 million backlog, a little bit over $60 million. Half of that can be paid for with federal dollars if I get the state matching dollars. But that's a piece that we have to keep working on. Our legislature, what I have found is that when I became Adjutant General, we hadn't really explained it very well. And we had not worked with them to correct the problem. And what we've been able to do is to generate momentum. So I don't want to throw the legislature or the governor under the bus, because I'll tell you, they're trying to work with us. The only issue we're running into right now is that they're trying to fix it all at once with a bond bill. If you gave me $30 million tomorrow and say, go fix your armories, I couldn't spend it. I got to spend it at about $5 to $10 million a year. $5 million and get a $5 million match from the federal government. Or I just drive the market, drive the cost up. I wouldn't get anything because there's not enough people out there to do it. So I just need that steady churn. And the legislature understands it. The only trouble is that when a bond bill gets voted down and they put all the eggs in the basket of the bond bill, then you get $0 for that year. If they just give you a little bit of money in the regular budget, that's better. So, but I'll tell you, we've gone from about a $4 million budget, and the National Guard itself, we're about a $500 million organization, most of that being federal funding. But our state funding, we've gotten down to almost $4 million. It takes about $9 million state funding to run our organization. So it's kind of a small organization, but and a small amount of money, but it's very important. And I see the hook coming out of my right eye. So my peripheral vision is very good. Great to be with you. Thank you very much.
Madam President.
Yes, that's on my list. The baskets that are on your table, please, we're going to get those to if you can put some money in those baskets, that will go to the Seawells folks who take such good care of us here every single week. So please give generously this Christmas season. Also, don't forget the card bucket. And General Livingston, thank you so much for all that you do for our state, for our country. We certainly appreciate your sacrifice and the sacrifices of your team. And I'm going to ask President-elect Stephen Creech to come up and make an announcement as well.
Thank you, President Kerry. Really quickly, two quick announcements. We are not meeting the next 2 weeks. We will be back on January 8th. We're having William Starrett, who is the Artistic Director of the Columbia City Ballet, come. So please come on the 8th and bring a guest. Also, one special announcement. Please join me in congratulating the President-elect for the 2018-2019 Rotary year, and that is Louisa Campbell. Congratulations.
Louisa will be the 5th female president of this club. I'm so very excited to be under your leadership. And we're going to close very quickly with song.
be a second, honey. Hold on.
Let me see what you doing in there.
I'm gonna say hi to a few
It was wonderful. I enjoyed it. Oh, Merry Christmas.